All right, tonight we're talking about a sharing spirit. A sharing spirit. So, when they're talking about, our key word for today is hospitality. Can somebody give me a definition of hospitality? Just any kind of brief definition for hospitality. Dwayne?
Opening up your house and your resources to other people, just allowing them to come and visit and just fellowship together.
Okay, all right. Yes, Mary Beth, and then Rich.
It has the root word hospital in it, and it comes from caring for others, whether it's, well, it doesn't matter where it is, in your home or how you do it, but just the caring for others.
Okay, good. Rich?
Just basically extending goodwill, resources, and thoughts to others.
Okay. I found this in Holman's Illustrated Bible Dictionary, and it says, to entertain or receive a stranger, a sojourner, into one's home as an honored guest, and to provide the guest with food, shelter, and protection. And Mary Beth was kind of going in this, the Greek word here that hospitality comes from means a love of strangers. So yeah, it just means that you're willing to help and to share what you have with somebody either you know or you don't know, but you're willing to share with somebody. So I just saw two examples here that I wanted to share with you. One is from the book of Isaiah, where it said it's not to share your bread with the hungry, talking about their lives, God is telling them, and to bring the homeless and poor into your house. You see the naked, you cover them, and not to hide yourself from your own flesh. And in the New Testament, we see the same thing, that God deals with hospitality or instructs us to contribute to the needs of the saints and to seek to show hospitality. I like the way he says that, to seek to show. So you don't sit around with your door waiting for somebody to knock on it to offer them hospitality, but you're seeking opportunities to be able to show hospitalities. So who should we show hospitality to? Some of the book covered some. I've added a few extra myself, but we'll start with the first one, strangers, people we don't know. In Hebrews 13, verse 2, do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unaware. So the hospitality is a glad reception that takes a stranger and engages them with both our head and our hands and our hearts. Have you had somebody come to this congregation that's been visiting and invite them over to your house, or maybe to take them to dinner afterwards if they're traveling through, offer them a place to stay if they need? Those are the kind of things that hospitality covers. I believe when we understand hospitality better, as believers, we'll be more motivated to show it through this, and an attitude of willingness and with enthusiasm. We're also told to be hospitable to our enemies. This is probably one of the hardest ones that we'll have to deal with. But God said through Paul in Romans 12, verse 20, to the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. And if he's thirsty, give him something to drink, for by doing so you will heap burning coals on his head. So we're told here that hospitality is a glad reception of a stranger or your enemy. Do not hold back from any mercy or kindness from your enemies. Think about it. How did the New Testament describe us before we came to God?
We were his enemy.
We're his enemy, right? Yeah. So God is trying to get that into our heads, right? So before you even realized you lived in sin, he had already sent his son to die upon the cross. You were enemies with God because you weren't living the life that he asked you to do. So That's the kind of mindset he wants when you're dealing with people you consider your enemies. Who are your enemies? What would be defined an enemy as? Keith? Who's your enemy?
I guess speaking from a Christian standpoint would be somebody that opposes the will of God, but it could be more than that.
Okay. Somebody else? Yeah. Dwayne.
Somebody wants to do you harm.
Yeah.
Might take something of yours, do some sort of misdeed to you.
Okay. Somebody that speaks about you, somebody that acts out against you, somebody, you could say your work, your family, your neighbors, all those could be considered into that. But what God is saying is treat them with kindness. And that's where you're heaping the burning coals on their head, showing them love and kindness instead of retaliating for the things that they've done to you as your enemy. How about the poor and needy? Is that somebody we need to be hospitable to? In James chapter 1, verse 27, religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this, to visit orphans and widows in their affliction and to keep oneself unstained from this world. So James' definition of pure and undefiled religion is based on action, not meaningless lip service to take care of the poor and needy. We can pray for them here, but are we taking care of them? Are we calling upon them? Are we taking them groceries? Are we making sure they have rides? Are we making sure they get to the doctor's appointments? These are all things of how we take care of those who need our help, whether that's poor or needy situation. We have a fund here at the building. Somebody shows up that needs food or gas or groceries, and we can pass that on to them. Somebody said, well, maybe they don't need that. Maybe they're just trying to trick us into that. But what is the right thing to do when that situation? I saw you, Richard. Matthew.
Oh, no.
If you give somebody money, I remember going to a roadside rest one time, traveling through Kentucky. Stopped the car, went to the bathroom, I came back, a man approached me at the door, I'm out of gas. Wife's in the hospital, kids are here, and have you guys experienced that? I think it's a whole thing now, but, and I was like, should I give him money or not? And, then I did give him money, and I told Leslie I shouldn't have done it. And she's like, no, if he's doing it to dupe us, he has to answer to God, not us. Is that what you were going to say, Matthew? I saw him shaking his head, yeah. So the right thing is to do to take care of them, because you don't really know, I guess, for sure. But I see it more and more as I go to roadside rest, as I'm sitting at a grocery store, getting my car started, somebody knocking on my window and, asking me for some money or, and so it's hard to tell, but God says to help the poor and needy. Yes.
Well, I mean, our head always goes to that place, to doubt people. But I think if we push ourselves to just believe people when they're asking for help, it's always a good thing, because if you put yourself in that person's shoes, how hard is it be to ask for help? I really think the people who are out there scamming are very few and far between, just because putting yourself in that position is hard to begin with.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, we had a policy when I was up in Akron at Brown Street, that if somebody came in and asked for gas, food, or the bills to be paid, we said, bring us the bills. We'll follow you over to the gas station and fill up your tank. We'll go to the grocery store, you buy your groceries, and we'll pay for it. They didn't usually want that. That's kind of some ways you can kind of try to work through some of that to see if they're really truly needing that stuff. Like if you say, I need some gas, let's go over to the gas station. I'll fill up your tank. I'm not going to give you $50 or, But, you know, I think here we have some gas cards and something like that for some people to help out if they need that. Yes, Mary Beth?
In Matthew 5, in verse 42, it says, "Give to the one who begs from you, and do not refuse the one who will borrow from you." And that's Jesus speaking.
Yeah, that's a good example there. Anybody else? All right, who else are we going to help with our hospitality? How about those that are sick? Those that are sick. On the judgment day, Jesus said to the people that he's accepting into the heaven, when I was sick, you visited me. When I was in prison, you came to me. You came and visited me. You showed interest. And when I think of prison, I also think about the people that are lonely, that are home, that don't have anybody to visit them. You know, especially during this last year. I mean, it's been tough for what we call the shut-ins, or those who are not able to get out. It's been very tough for them. And you know, you give them a phone call, and you're probably going to be there an hour, but it's worth it because it really means a lot to people when you call and check on them and ask how they're doing. These are just a few of those that is important for God to show us. Our friends, people at work, your neighbors. 1 John 4, verse 7, "Beloved, let us love one another, for love is from God, and whoever loves has been born of God and knows God." You know, you've heard the three loves describing, or the three definitions describing love, and which one is God? Do you remember what love he is? I think you mouthed it. Agape, yes. That's the love that God shows us, that doesn't expect anything in return, but he gives freely, and that's what he expects us to do too. That agape love, that means giving love that seeks the best interest of others and is not selfish or self-seeking. God love for us creates a responsive love towards others. How about fellow Christians? We could add that to the list, right? Galatians 6, verse 10, "As we have opportunity, let us do good to everyone, and especially to those who are of the household of faith." As God's family, the church cares for one another, and as well as the personal needs of those people in the congregation, as well as doing what is right and good for even those who are non-believers that come. The Lord places before us this work, and he expects us to do it, to show hospitality for others. And finally, our family, our own family, our physical family, our earthly family. 1 Timothy 5, verse 8, "But if anyone does not provide for his relatives, and especially for members of his household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever," or an infidel in some translation. So this tells us, as God's, that care of a family, biblical instruction by God is that faith places a high priority on our family, our physical family, our earthly family, and our Christian family. Meeting the physical needs of one's family is part of a Christian stewardship. As you are the leader of that group, you are to provide for your family. Christians should manage personal resources in a responsible way to care for family needs. If you think you need a new car and your family's going without food, you don't need a new car. I know I get people at the hospital all the time that can't afford their medication, they tell me, and they got a pack of cigarettes in their pockets. And it's like, it's priorities. It's priorities. Which one do you prefer? Which one do you want? And so sometimes you have to make those hard decisions, but God's responsibility for us is to take care of our family, and that's our extended family too, our moms. You know, my dad's passed away, but my mother is still here. It's my responsibility to make sure that she's taken care of, that she gets to the doctor, she gets the things she needs groceries, that kind of thing. That's my responsibility, and you may have some for your family too. And I'll tell you one thing, it's important as you age that your children see that you're doing this. Because someday you're going to need groceries and a ride to the doctor's office and help around the house. And so you need to teach your children or show your children that you're taking care of their parents. And if they stay with God, if they live a godly life, I have a feeling they'll do the same thing when it's your turn. All right. So the question out of the book says, why are Christians admonished to practice the service of hospitality? What does admonish mean? What's that?
Encouraged.
Encourage. Okay. That's a good word. Encourage, reprimanded to practice this service. All right. So in Hebrews 13, verses 1 and 2, let brotherly love continue. Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for thereby some may have entertained angels unaware. And in Galatians 6, verse 10, so then as we have opportunity, let us do good to everyone, and especially for those of the household of faith. So when we're talking about admonishing, this is from God, right? God's instruction is. So the Christian who should have the strongest motivation to show hospitality is not only because we're commanded of God to do it, but I think, as I mentioned earlier, when we understand hospitality more, then we're motivated to see how people respond to it. I think we're motivated more to do it. And that's something right there. Not only, I mean, it's nice when God commands us to do something, we need to do it. But then when you do it, and then you get all these other benefits that we'll talk about here a little bit, that's kind of like a bonus, or, it's like, well, maybe God did know what he was talking about, right? Of course he did. Yes, Dwayne.
I was just thinking, maybe a spoiler for something ahead, right? But one of the last things Jesus said is, hey, I go to prepare for you a place, right? And that's our opportunity to be a reflection of Jesus. Because, Jesus is really saying, hey, I'm gonna open up a room for you in my Father's house, right? I'm gonna show you that ultimate hospitality. I'm gonna give you that glimpse of, what I'm doing for you. And, it's just like that very solid example of him on this earth washing another person's feet.
Mm-hmm.
He's literally saying, hey, paradise is going to have a room for you. I'm opening my house and I'm going to be hospitable to you. So the least you can do is to be hospitable to those here on earth.
Good. Dwight?
Yeah, I think one thing too is what is our attitude towards it? I mean, we can go out and I can do this or I can do that, but what's my real attitude towards it? Sincerely, as God has commanded us to love one another. My attitude towards God, my attitude towards my friends, my attitude towards even my enemies, as you talked about. So I think that's a big part too, is what's our attitude towards all these things?
Yep. Yes, Rich?
There's the other side of the coin too. People do you right. You don't just walk off and forget it. You try to, if you can, next time you see them in need, help them out, or pay it forward. There's a reason that the people begging on the on-ramps and the streets and stuff are generally looked up. They don't give a second look because you think they're scamming. I mean, of course, there's all the stories on the news about it that they actually are. But the fact is that they're taking a good work and making people question, should I be doing this? I mean, I caught a guy doing exactly that. He was a Army veteran, give me money. I just rolled down the window and I was going to give him some money. Then I'm like, just ask him. I'm like, so what unit were you with? Guy didn't even know what I was talking about. Yeah. So, that's the thing. We need to appreciate what's being done for us, but also have that spirit about being Christ-like and keep paying it forward.
I think that's why he says in this Galatians 6, verse 10, right? Let us do good to everyone, but especially those of the households of faith in our body of Christ. That's where it's important. So we had good and bad examples of hospitality throughout the Old Testament. I don't know if you guys got a chance to read these. They talked about Abraham. Abraham, remember, sitting outside of his tent, and 3 men came up and he shooed him away, right? I don't have enough food, or what? What did he do? He fed him, right? He brought him in, had his wife go get a goat or something, and fatted calf, and had it prepared, and bread and water. And how old was Abraham when this happened? Does anybody know? Yeah, he was 99 years old, because what did the 3 men tell him at the very end? You're going to have a child next year, and that's where Isaac came at age 100. So there's hospitality for you. Don't expect that, though, Dwight, okay? All right. How about Lot? Do you remember Lot? You know, when he met the men at the city, brought him to his house, right? What was going on at that time? What was the name of the city? Sodom, right? And so he brings him in and protects him, because the townspeople want to do terrible things to him and kill him and whatever, and Lot protects him. And what did Lot get in return? He was spared, right? Except for his wife maybe had some issues. But yeah, the story of Elisha is another one. There was a woman that Elisha, as he's traveling, prophesying for God, he always went through this town, and every time he did, he stopped at this house, and this lady fed him. And finally she said to her husband, he's coming through enough, let's make a room up for him. And so he had a room where he could stay overnight and sleep and rest. And what happened for her? Do you remember the story there? She also was childless and ended up having a child shortly after that. And then one of the bad examples they talked about was from David. David, when he was, after Samuel the prophet died, he was out, and there was a house. He sent 10 of his young men to go get food from, and the guy's name was Nabal that was in charge of this house, and he refused David. He's like, who is David, the son of Jesse? Which tells me he knew exactly who David was, but he wasn't recognizing him as his king. So the men were going back to David to tell him that this guy, was not going to help us, and David was getting his army ready. We're going to go, and we're going to take his land, and we're going to kill him. But somebody told his wife what her husband did. Her name was Abigail. He told her what he'd done, and she grabbed several goats or kids or whatever, and bread and drink and clothing, and went to David and said, I'm sorry that my husband was like that, but I have this to give you. And it touched David's heart. It touched his heart that he spared Nabal his life that day. If you go on to read it, Nabal died within a couple months after that, and David married Abigail. Why is hospitality a natural thing for Christians? Why is it a natural thing to do as a Christian? Any ideas on that?
That's why you show the love of Christ.
Yeah, okay, that's a good one, Phil. Ephesians 2, verse 10, for we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works. Why did God create us? To serve ourselves? No, to serve others and to serve him, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in it. That is the mission of God for every one of us, is that he has a plan for us. The good works that we do are not incidental in God's plan. They are instead an essential part of God's plan for each believer. Good works are demonstrated in gratitude, in our character, in our actions, because of our faith. Acts 2, verse 46, we saw this in the early churches of Christ in Jerusalem. And day by day, attending the temple together and breaking bread in their homes, they received their food with glad and generous hearts. So the early Christians, they were dealing with what in the early church?
A lot of them are displaced.
Persecution, displaced, beatings, thrown in jail. Remember, Saul was out here during this time helping throw those people into jail. But the Christians were not only going to the temple to meet, but they also were going to each other's home, supporting one another, helping each other, being hospitable towards one another. Give 2 reasons why elders are expected to give hospitality. In 1 Timothy 3, verses 1 and 2, he's going through the qualifications of an elder, and he says, "This is a faithful saying, if a man desires the position of a bishop, he desires a good work. A bishop then must be blameless, the husband of one wife, temperate, sober-minded, of good behavior, hospitable," and he goes on from there. But obviously, since we're studying this part of it, he instructs the elders to be hospitable. Because you're being a leader over a flock, you as a leader need to be hospitable to the members of your congregation, those outside of the congregation. And the second reason is to be an example to the flock. In 1 Peter 5, verse 3, Peter says, "Not being lords over them entrusted to you, but being examples to the flock." To be an example to those around you. That's what God has instructed for the elders to do in the work of the church. We need examples of hospitality in the church. And of course, the elders are charged with this task of being the example to the congregation. Anybody else have anything they want to add? All right, next question, number 6. What would hospitality reveal about the widow needing assistance? This was an odd question, I thought, but I went ahead and just answer questions. What does hospitality reveal about a widow needing assistance? Well, in 1 Timothy 5, verse 10, speaking of the widows, Paul says, "In having a reputation for good works, if she has brought up children, has shown hospitality, has washed the feet of the saints, has cared for the afflicted, and has devoted herself to every good work." So in other words, as he was instructing the people at the churches they were starting up, he was saying, those widows that need assistance, especially those that have shown hospitality when they had a family, and now it's your turn as church members to now take care of her, to see if she has been a Christian, that she's been obedient to God and showed hospitality in her family, does not go unnoticed. As we talked about taking care of your own family, your earthly family, it's also a Christian family also that you're taking care of in that situation. All right. The writer of this book gives us 3 rules for practicing hospitality. What's the first rule?
Not complain.
Yeah. No complaining. If you're doing it and you're complaining about it, you're not doing it for the right reasons, are you? You're not doing it for the right reasons. 1 Peter 4, verse 9 even tells us, "Show hospitality to one another without grumbling." Don't do it just because it's a commandment of God, but do it out of the love for God and for mankind. And if that's truly what's in your heart, then you're going to do it without grumbling. 2 Corinthians 9, verse 6 and 7 tells us, "But this I say, he who sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, but he who sows bountifully, he will also reap bountifully. So let each one of us give as he purposed in a heart, not grudgingly or of necessity, for God loves a cheerful giver." We like to read that verse when we're talking about, at the Lord's table, about collecting money. God loves a cheerful giver, but that's just one example. Hospitality is another example where we know that Christians ideally are going to be hospitality. It's a natural thing towards each other, from a heart of love for God and others rather than a sense of duty that they have to perform. What's rule number 2 from the book?
Be done to God's glory.
Exactly. If you're doing it for your glory, that's the wrong reason. You do it for God's glory. In Matthew 6, verses 1 through 4, this reading here talks about practicing your righteousness before other people. If you do it so you're seen of man and you get praised by man, God's saying you already got your reward. But if you're doing it to people in secret, your Father sees what happens in secret, and He will reward you. So it's to be done for God's glory, and not to be people talking at church about, you know, so-and-so had me over, and somebody else had, you know, they had me over too. You know, that's not what it's about. It's about doing it for God's glory. Rendering service with a good will as to the Lord and not to man. Every action we take, every job that we do to please God. What happens when you go to your earthly job every 2 weeks or once a month? What happens? You get paid, right? That's right. But every action we take, every job we do to please God and to His glory, and your payday will come. Maybe on this earth, but definitely in this world afterwards. All right, third rule for practicing is rewards. You are going to get a reward. And as we kind of talked about already, Jesus said, He also said to them and invited them, when you give a dinner or a supper, do not ask your friends, your brothers, your relatives, their rich neighbors, lest they also invite you back and you have been repaid. But when you give a feast, invite the poor, the maimed, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed because they cannot repay you. For you shall be repaid at the resurrection of the just. I think just saying what we've all been saying up to now, your reward that you're seeking is from God, not from man. Rich?
Yeah, there's also those people that when they want to do hospitality for you, they go out of their way to help you, and then it's extortion, so that you will do stuff for them, and they don't mind reminding you the fact. Remember when I did that for you? I need to do this, and then they use it like a bat. So I've come across people like that. You just steer clear of them. You help them when they absolutely need it, and just that's it. But that's kind of the thing too. Is, where people are concerned, the world doesn't seem to care much for the Christian much. So it behooves us to do well for the Christian family first and as often as best we can, because it's probably not going to be much longer before we're all we're going to be able to depend on.
Very good. Thank you for that. And your Father who sees you in secret will reward you on that last day. That's a reward we're seeking after, not from somebody that can pay you back in this life. That they have, like Rich said, it reminds you of what they did for you, and now they expect something in return. I had somebody give me advice a while back that said, if you loan money to your family or to somebody at church, expect not to ever get it paid back. They'll say, I promise to pay you back. Expect to never have it paid back, and then you will never hold a grudge against them because they didn't pay you back. That's the kind of attitude when you are hospitable towards somebody. Don't expect to be paid back. Don't expect to be invited to their house, or they've never invited me, so I'm not going to invite them, or some attitude like that. Just expect no repayment. You're doing it for the glory of God and not for yourself. Does anybody else have any? Yeah, Thomas, do you have your hand up at the back?
Are we to continue to give to others that refuse to pay us back? Or are we to maybe help someone else? I know we don't give so that we get paid back.
Right.
But could we also be helping others besides maybe just that one person? I have a person that asks me from time to time, not real often, but time to time, and I'm willing to do that and to help. But then there's times where he has extra money, stimulus check, and he never
Offers
thinks,
to pay
well, he
back.
never even thinks to say, well, I still owe you that money, and I have just written it off, whatever I give him, I'll continue to give it, but I just won't give it maybe as often because I would like to help others as well.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good attitude in your heart, that you're like, okay, maybe I could help somebody else. And again, you're not doing it to get repaid back.
No.
But you know at points that, that they're doing okay, and maybe you could just help somebody else at that point. Yes, Brianna.
I mean, that situation is definitely like super hard, but I think it's important to remember that, Jesus made the ultimate sacrifice for us. We didn't deserve it at all. So, just kind of follow in what he's doing, that keep helping others even though they don't deserve it and we know they don't deserve it.
Yeah, we're the biggest guilty party of that, aren't we? Even though, because he died on our behalf, and yet we continue to sin from time to time.
I was thinking in Tom's case, the guy's taking advantage of him. Some people
Yeah.
are taking advantage of him.
Yeah, it's like I say, people that come here and say they need gas or groceries or my bills paid, bring your bills in. I'll take care of it. Let's go to the gas station. They never want to do that. They just want, give me $10 or something. They just want cash. That tells me that a little problem there. Yes, Matthew.
Yeah, so come back to what you're saying, you never loan money to family. You give money to family.
Yes, that's even a better word to say.
Period.
As many times as they say, I'm going to pay you back, no, I give you this.
And for the reason for doing that, comes back to rule number 1 in the book, is because when you loan money to somebody, when you loan that to them, you expect them to pay you back.
Right.
And it's very easy to get very upset when you're not getting that. Now, I'm not saying you go around and just give everything, give your entire livelihood away to where you're destitute. What I'm saying is when it comes to that, it's better just to give it with no intention of ever getting it back, because it's a lot easier on you as well.
Yep. Mentally,
Yes.
it's going to be easier for you. That's right. So there's 5 ways that we can have hospitality grow for us. I believe that one of the things that happens with hospitality, you get lifetime friends out of these situations. They may move away, but they're still your friends. If you've had them over, you've done things for them, they become lifetime friends. But you also got to be careful about who that you are inviting. Like if it's somebody that's not willing to live a godly life, then you may have to cut the tie with them. So sometime that you're an example to people by doing hospitality to other people in Christ and to even your children. And we're told that it's done out of love. I think we've mentioned that already. How does God love us? It encourages us, encourage one another to build one another up and to mentor our children into that. We didn't even get to this. I was going to ask the older people about that, but hey, we're building our faith into a mountain of service with a sharing spirit of hospitality. Thank you for your comments, and we will see you next Wednesday.